Hi, welcome to Shakespeare with Sarah. I am Sarah and today we're going to look at Goneril by Day and Night He Wrongs Me from King Lear. In this video I'm going to give you some acting choices to think about. I'm going to break down all the context for what's come before the monologue, and I'm also going to break down the lines for you. This one was requested by Isabella a long time ago. I'm so sorry, Isabella. Honestly, Christmas came and my brain fell out, so it took me a long time to get to this one. So let's jump into some acting choices to start off with. The first thing I want to mention about this monologue is that I wouldn't necessarily recommend it if you are a beginner actor. So if you're only really starting out on your acting journey, then I would probably maybe go for something slightly simpler, because this is a complex play. If you are an experienced actor but you're kind of new to Shakespeare, this might be more for you. I think the key with anything in King Lear is that you really need to do a lot of acting prep work, digging into the characters and into the play in detail to really understand what's going on. So if you don't have that process that you're kind of used to working through, you might struggle a little bit with this monologue, even though the language is not too tricky. I will mention on the fly here, actually, now that I think about it, I have created a monologue prep checklist that you can get at my website, so that can kind of walk you through a little bit of process. But even with that, I still think you're going to need to go even further into detail with your prep for this one, because the deal with King Lear is that it's a play that starts at the end of Lear's life, and there's obviously a lot that has happened in this family. There has been a lot of probably some bad blood, some interesting family dynamics that are not really specified in the play. They're not in a lot of detail, and most actors that do anything from Lear have to do a lot of work and probably a lot of discussion with their director to understand what's come before and what's going to motivate them properly and connect to what's going on. So this is definitely a play where I recommend you put your character on the hot seat and ask them a bunch of questions. You can literally just, if you've got some acting friends that will do that with you, you can literally sit on a chair and be Goneril and get them to ask you a bunch of questions about your family history and just improv what comes up so you get some ideas. Or you could also sit down and write a bunch of questions, like how would you get to know something about someone's family history if you were just maybe starting to be friends with them. Think of Goneril as your new friend, and she is going to tell you what has happened in her life, what her dad was like, what her sisters are like, what she struggles with, all the stuff about her husband. Ask her some questions. Get into that, because you're going to need to understand her world. I'm always going on about world building because it is really important, but it is particularly important in King Lear, where you don't have a lot of evidence in the text for what has come before. You do have a little bit. She does talk with Regan about how her dad, Lear, was often kind of going off the rails, but it does say that he's definitely worse with age, and they start to worry about that stuff. And I'll talk more about that when we get to context. I definitely recommend this is a play that you need to read, and watch productions of. I personally loved the Royal Shakespeare Company version that is on digital theatre that stars Anthony Sher as Lear and is directed by Gregory Doran. I thought it was really powerful and really brought out a lot of the family dynamics really well. So if you have access to digital theatre, if you can afford to purchase that one, I would definitely recommend having a look at it. And there are a few scenes from that on YouTube as well, so I'll link those below. That might get you a little bit of an idea about some of the family dynamics. So let's jump into the context for this monologue. You probably know a little bit about King Lear, I hope. The basis for it is that King Lear has decided that he's kind of giving up his kingdom. I'm going to retire, and he's like, hello my 3 daughters, I'm going to divide up my kingdom and you can each have a third as long as you tell me how much you love me. And Goneril and Regan are, of course, we love you so much, daddy, mwah, mwah, mwah. And Cordelia is like, well, I don't know, I love you like a dad, what can I say? So Goneril and Regan basically inherit everything, and Cordelia gets shunted off to France with her new husband, who is the King of France? Prince of France? Can't remember. France dude. Then Lear is like, you know what? I'm just gonna come and visit you guys and hang out at your houses now. And Regan very quickly is like, says to Goneril, he can come to your house first, which seems to me like bang on the money for what sisters say to each other, am I right? I have 3 sisters. So when we see Goneril for this monologue, she is basically setting up for us what it has been like for her having her dad come to visit. There have been a lot of rowdy soldiers that have come with him, kind of as his entourage. You know, theoretically back then, they would have had a lot of people that traveled with, you know, the royal families when they were moving. That was normal. There is a great video from the National Theatre, which I'll also link below, where the actors are talking about kind of the different perspectives on whether it's normal and acceptable to have 100 people hanging out at your house. Because that's kind of what King Lear has done. He's sort of like gate crashed. Not gate crashed, because he said he'd come, but like, you know, he's brought a bunch of friends to live in her space, and she is not dealing with it well. The soldiers are being, by the sounds of it, pretty rough, and Lear is being not great either. He's definitely starting to lose his marbles here. But she also, in this monologue, is talking about how she's kind of going to make a lot of what's happening. She's definitely going to make a big deal out of it to make him leave. I think the key to what's going on here is that she is having to psych herself up. That's how I see this monologue. This is a monologue where she's trying to convince herself, or I mean, kind of building up the adrenaline, I guess, and the energy to go and speak to her father. I personally think that probably she never had a great relationship with her father. I suspect he's probably always been a little bit volatile, and she's already said to Regan that we got to be careful because he's going to end up treating us like he's treated Kent and Cordelia, and just we're going to lose everything. But I think because she has inherited this, well, her extra stuff now, she's kind of got a little bit more guts behind her. But potentially this may be the first time that she's really stood up to her father. So this monologue is important. There's a lot going on there. I think there's a lot going on in the back of her mind, that there probably would be memories about how she has had to be quiet and not speak up when things have been rubbish with her dad. And when her dad has been a jerk to her, she's probably not been able to speak up in the past. I think to make Goneril powerful and real, she needs a history of having been kind of put down. I don't think it's helpful to just think of her as like a meanie, you know, she's just a bitch. I think there's still going to be a fair amount of fear about how he's going to take this. What could the possible repercussions be? So this is definitely one that's a good monologue to be thinking about. Like, what are her secret fears? What is it that she's really scared of him doing? What's the worst that could happen? And just a final sort of reminder about not kind of making her a two-dimensional villain, even though she does end up doing some really horrible things as the play goes on. I don't necessarily think it's helpful to think of her as a really horrible person from the outset. I think she becomes cruel as time goes on, as the play passes and these terrible events occur. It's sort of a desperate times, desperate measures thing. It was a cruel time that they lived in, but it doesn't mean that she was always a cruel person. So personally, in doing this monologue, I wouldn't necessarily be thinking much about the stuff that happens to Goneril later and letting that affect you. I think she is a particular person at this point in time, and that's the type of character work that I would be concentrating on. Who is Goneril right now? So let's jump now into breaking down all the line meanings. So the first line that actually begins the scene is, "Did my father strike my gentleman for chiding of his fool?" So that basically means like, did my dad hit one of the guys here at court because he was making fun of Lear's fool? And Oswald, who is Goneril's kind of like butler, let's say, for the purposes of this, is like, yes, he did. You might want to play with that line in rehearsal, just using it. You can potentially use it in your performance or in your self-tape if you want. Sometimes I find if you've got a single line kind of leading you into your monologue, sometimes that helps in getting that sort of intensity and the vibe and the right mindset. Because actually when she's saying, by day and night he wrongs me, she's actually responding, I think, quite strongly to the fact that Lear has hit someone in her household. So she's not just saying generally, oh, like he keeps stuffing me around, although that is what it leads into. She's actually responding to this particular instance of like, oh, he hit someone. God, he's always doing this. He's doing this every day. He's doing different things. So I would personally give it a pretty full-on start to this monologue. Every hour he flashes into one gross crime or other that sets us all at odds. So basically, like, he's doing stuff all the time, every hour. Notice that hour is at the end of the line. Ends of lines are important. Shakespeare picked words to go at the ends of lines for a reason. In this case, the reason is it's not just generally I'm annoyed, it's actually Lear is doing this every single hour of the day. This is happening over and over again. So if you get that kind of vibe when you're stressing the word hour, that will hopefully kind of color the way you're going into it as well. Lots of help for us here, thank you, Shakespeare. And sets us all at odds is basically, it's like it's making us feel like frustrated and uncomfortable in our own home, which, you know, is not a nice feeling if you've ever felt like that. And she says, going on, same line, I'll not endure it. So let that flow. If it's part of the same line, let it flow. That I think is a really important line for, that's her trying to psych herself up. That's her kind of making the decision of, I'm going to go and talk to him about this. This can't go on. It's not okay. His nights grow riotous and himself upbraids us on every trifle. So she's sort of listing things here. So she's saying one thing is his nights, all these people that are hanging out in her house basically are getting rowdy, they're drinking, they're being stupid, and himself, that's Lear, upbraids us on every trifle. So he's like he's upbraids us usually means like tells us off over any little thing. Again, same line, she goes on to say, when he returns from hunting, I will not speak with him. Say I am sick. I feel like that's self-explanatory, so I won't explain that. If you come slack of former services, you shall do well. The fault of it I'll answer. So basically that means like you can actually slack off on stuff that he's asking you to do. So if Lear's asking Oswald to go and do something, she's saying, be a bit lazy about it, and I'll take responsibility for it. So all of this here and this next section too, she's starting to plan, like she wants it to be a big deal. She wants Lear to react badly so she can say, you are reacting really badly and look how you're treating my staff. Oswald then says, he's coming, madam, I hear him. So even though you're probably not going to include that if you're doing an audition, you probably want to get the sense of hearing that he's coming because, well, in my version it says there's horns. So you're probably going to be sort of spurred on to action. This is a shift here from planning to, okay, this is what we're doing. That could be something that you also might want to play with movement for, because perhaps if he's coming close or somebody else is coming, she might want to move towards Oswald to speak more privately with him, or otherwise she might speak a bit faster because she's concerned that someone's coming. They might move to another space because someone's coming. So think about what's the impact on your voice and movement if you know that people are about to arrive. Then she says, put on what wearying negligence you please, you and your fellow servants. I'll have it come to question. So again, this is another one of like, you can kind of be a bit of a rubbish servant. When she says, I'll have it come to question, she wants it to be raised so she can have this argument with him. If he distaste it, so I've seen versions that say if he distaste it, I've seen versions that say if he dislike it. I think you would be fine to choose either of those. Comes to the same thing. If he distaste it, let him to our sister, whose mind and mine I know in that are one, not to be overruled. So that means if he doesn't like it, he can go and see my sister. I know we think the same about this and we're not going to let him trample all over us. So again, she's really psyching herself up here. And again, same line, idle old man that still would manage those authorities that he had given away. Idle old man, she's kind of like, that's a very disparaging way to say like stupid old lazy dude that is no longer a king. So she's not referring to him in any sort of respectful way. It's very disparaging there. that is still trying to keep control of everything, even though he said that he's given his kingdom to his daughters. I think therein lies the key to Goneril's kind of struggle here. She wants her power back. She's never had power. He's always been, I think he's always been a tyrant, and he continues to be a tyrant, and it's even worse now because he's said that she is now able to rule a part of the kingdom, or that she's going to inherit it, but he's come to her, is taking up her space, and is still ruling everyone, treating them terribly. I will not have it. It is the last straw. Another one, same line. Now by my life, old fools are babes again and must be used with checks as flatteries when they are seen abused. I find that one to be quite interesting phrasing, not super easy. That's fairly dense language there. By my life is kind of like an expression like by my hat, I suppose. We don't really have expressions in that way. She's saying that old people, and again, notice that she's using very disparaging language for him, old people become like children, and you have to check them, which means like to tell them off, and not just kind of tell them that they're wonderful when they're behaving badly. Then she says to Oswald, remember what I have said. And that's a really clear like directive of like, okay, there's someone coming, do what I said. There is a section after that that goes, and let his knights have colder looks among you. I personally wouldn't worry about including that section because it doesn't really add much more. It's basically more of the same, and I think typically that's kind of left out if it's an audition situation. And that's it for Goneril. Please let me know your requests, your struggles, all those things, your comments, like, share, subscribe, all of that lovely stuff to help me get out to more people. I appreciate your support, and good luck with all your auditions. I will see you next time.